not necessarily the cheapest EV that is going to be the most popular or the best selling. It's going to be the ones that really excite, really, entice to make that switch from ICE to EV.
Our future for 2025 at least is still a mixed bag actually, because we've got, and we should discuss them, the Harrier EV, we've got the Creta EV, which are both sort of legacy products conversions, but we've got the Vitara, which is grounds up new.
The question is, if they have more choice, if they have better choice, will people buy EVs, or is it, let's say, a structural or a fundamental issue with the category that is the problem?
At the luxury end, the chances of a customer switching to EV is higher.
There has to be consistency in, let's say, taxation, incentives, subsidies at the state level,
right,
to kind of just not create these kind of turbulence in the EV market. Hello and welcome back to our weekly podcast, Deep Drive, powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
And I'm Sergius Barretto. And today, Hormazd, looks like we're back again talking EVs, right?
Absolutely. We just can't get EVs out of our system. And obviously, I think while we're doing this, there's reason to talk about EVs.
Exactly.
After a little bit of bad news, I think we are seeing a lot of, let's say, new launches on the anvil. And I think the topic really is, will 2025 see the bounce back of EVs, or even in a way the rebirth of EVs? Because clearly there's a lot more to come, especially in the mass market space.
True. No, absolutely, Hormazd. In fact, and there are small little sort of inklings of this, and I want your opinion on this, because if I have the data, if you look at it, EV sales, we know, were coming down. They were tapering down. September was the lowest in a 17-month period, and just 6,148 units sold. Clearly the lowest in 17-month low. But October, it bounced back and went past the 10,000 mark for the first time.
Yeah.
We sold about 11,000 units. November, it's fallen back again. It's 8,500. Still higher than the low, but obviously not another record month. What do you think is causing this? Was it the festive demand?
I think October was the festive demand.
Okay.
I mean, huge festive demand. I think a lot of people pushed sales also, cleared out a lot of inventories. So I think retail was also very, very high.
Right.
An opportunity to, clear out unsold stock. But I think, as you said, November's, also fairly high. And I think, it's down to choice. I mean, now we have an alternative to, let's say,
Tata Mahindra.
Well, Mahindra wasn't even there.
I mean, the 400 was there, but
hardly. But
wasn't much.
MG is selling more than the 400. So in that sense, it would be more MG. But I think MG has done an outstanding job with the Windsor.
Right.
In fact, it's a fantastic product, superbly priced, does the job, and the battery as a service, or the BAS, as they say, has been a very innovative way of selling the vehicle, as we know. And we'll talk a bit about that as well. But I think clearly what is happening is, I think, there is issues of charging infrastructure. There are the other issues of, let's say, cost, all the typical factors that are there, which kind of, let's say, has an impediment or limits EV purchase. But I think what no one's really talked about was choice. Now, quite frankly, Tata products, yes, they were the trailblazers. They kind of invented or ignited the EV segment in India single-handedly, first to market, done a phenomenal job. But I think at now some point, Tata cars have been facing issues and people are hesitant to buy. They want more choice over there. So the question is, if they have more choice, if they have better choice, will people buy EVs, or is it, let's say, a structural or a fundamental issue with the category that is the problem, which, I think is, I don't think that's really the case. Yeah.
Okay, you mean it's not a structural problem. It's down to choice.
Definitely it is. Look, I think, let's face it, today we are still hardwired very much towards, let's say, gasoline or diesel cars, petrol cars.
That's true.
The fuel pumps are all over the place. With EVs, you have to still plan. You have to download an app. Charging stations are not easy to get to. Home charging, we've talked about, is still a big issue. People are that's a deal breaker for a lot of people. That, if you don't have home charging, you may not want to buy an EV. But at the same time, if an EV is enticing enough, exciting enough, people might kind of ignore that inconvenience they have just for the sheer product that is on offer.
No, absolutely.
And, that down goes to price, the tech, the features. We talk about what Mahindra have done. I think they've really shaken up the EV space with the current launch. But I think clearly we've seen that with the Windsor, which really goes to show that, you come up with an enticing product at the right price, people will take it. And the Windsor is now 2 months in a row the best-selling EV
model. Yes.
And honestly, Sergius, you were there for the launch. I think, I'd like to talk on battery as a service, which was a very interesting way of, let's say, getting people to look at EVs in a different way, because they got the price down, optically below 10 lakhs, which for an EV is fantastic. And obviously, then you have a lease on the battery.
True. Absolutely. No, exactly. It was a very, very innovative marketing campaign. I'm calling it marketing because, frankly, there's only about 10 or 15% that are actually opting for the battery as a service.
I think it's a little complicated because you have to have two separate leases, one for the car, one for the battery, and that gets a little complicated.
Because MG are calling it a sort of battery as a service, but it's nothing but a finance scheme. You're financing the battery like you are financing your car. So it is a loan scheme, so to speak, and it's only limited to 4 companies right now, that you have to go through one of these 4 partners. And also then the EMI varies depending on that, your profile, of course, and then the company also, different companies offer different schemes. So it's quite complicated when you get down to it. And I think it's done its job of bringing the customers to the showroom, and then maybe they back away from the scheme, but not from the car.
Yeah.
The car is, in fact, Hormazd, looking at the numbers, 3,100 units in November. They did October, 2,700, so Windsor, clearly, I think, like you said, sort of reignited interest in the EV.
We're starting to see Windsors, a lot of them on the road. It's quite a big vehicle, very spacious. And, let's talk about what the Windsor is. I think very well packaged. Interiors are terrific for the price. NVH not great, which we've spoken about in a rotate. It's a little, it's quite noisy inside for an EV, which, is something you don't expect. And I think the suspension also not too great, not as plush as we would like. But, for this price, those are not really deal breakers, and people just want something which is so fantastic with the tech inside. Even battery size not very high, but just good enough for very big, but just good enough for everyday commuting. So again, with the Comet, which I think a lot of us like, I think people are seeing the value of small cars which don't require too much charging. And, even that, I think, has kind of held the number. It's not fallen off a cliff.
Correct. Yeah.
And after the discounts, that's also doing pretty well. So I think people are slowly warming up to the idea of EVs if there's a good choice.
True. No, absolutely. In fact, and Hormazd, MG, an interesting fact is that, Tata Motors have really taken the hit because their market share is now 50%. MG is 36% of the EV space, So that's a really big gain coming obviously on the backs of the Windsor.
Yeah.
The Comet, and they had the ZS EV, didn't really do too much, but the Windsor clearly has given them market share, and it now looks more equitable rather than earlier where, Tata was some 70-80% market share.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's interesting. But do you think, Hormazd, the Mahindras now will also eat into the pie? You just drove them.
Yeah, I think, I think that was an incredible launch. It was quite mad. We were there, and I think Mahindra, just dazzled everyone. I think with the pricing, 18.9 lakhs for the 6E, which is the base version,
right,
and 21.9 for the...
Yeah, both these are base variant.
We don't know what the top end is, but and with a smaller 59 kilowatt hour battery. But I think, what Mahindra has done is they've really kind of thrown everything at it to really kind of overcompensate for any kind of reservations people would have about EVs, the charging, whatever. They made the cars, especially the 60, so aspirational, so desirable that I think you'll have a lot of people just buying it for what the vehicle is. Firstly, there are a lot of first to it that styling is extremely radical. Might be polarizing. There could be some who kind of say it's not me and, it's too extrovert for their liking. But the sense we get from dealerships is people have just flipped for the 60 styling. And that's enough to kind of want to buy the car, just that in itself. In terms of spec, it's just, again, fantastic. We drove the 79 kilowatt hour, 286 horsepower, 0 to 100 in 6.7 seconds, a top speed over 200 kilometers an hour. These are all records for an Indian designed, conceived, manufactured cars. You don't get anything faster, quicker. The superlatives go on and on.
Not at the mass segment.
Exactly.
That it's at.
Exactly. And, I think they very cleverly positioned, they've got two vehicles. They've got the XEV90 also, which again is more conventional, more for the family. It's got the space. So you've got both these products. So a very smart move actually launching both, because, you kind of catered one to the young extrovert enthusiast with the 6E, and, to the more traditional kind of a family guy with the 9E. And I think, looking at the way they drive, I mean, just blown away with the refinement, which is absolutely world class. Ride and handling on the 6E also superb. The 9E rides even better. It's like you're literally floating. They've really nailed the ride with that. Ride was never a strong point of Mahindra and Mahindra, but really, I think they've kind of set a new benchmark with their EVs. The rear wheel drive also, gives a certain dynamic character to the cars, which makes them great to drive, especially the 6E, the way you sit in it. And, again, it's something which has just wowed everyone and dazzled everyone. And, I think that's really what their strategy is, and also the way they've kind of, let's say, spec the car. A lot of features, which some of them honestly are very gimmicky. And also what happens is that with so many features, you're stretching the software architecture and bandwidth, which could lead to glitches at times because there's so much packed in over there. But we'll come to that later. But, there are a lot of stuff in there which is, I would say, gimmicky, but in a way, I think a lot of Indian customers like them. The way the lighting is in the roof. You can watch TV, you can watch YouTube. You've got that DOMS where you can take selfies. I'm sure kids would love that. So I think I would say it's marketing genius what Mahindra has done with their EV2. Yeah. There are a lot of still flaws in them. I think they themselves have said that their software is still a beta version. It is a little glitchy. And honestly, if there's one thing about it, I think some of the ergonomics are a complete mess. And really, it's a case of design, especially in the 6E. Aesthetic design taking total precedence over functional design. You've got a lot of features embedded in the touchscreen. I mean, simple things like for the aircon, you have a two-step process. Even the way you access the drive modes, not very intuitive. It's not very intuitive all. And then you have got a bunch of buttons. You've got them on the roof. You've got them, on the side panel. And they're all very randomly allocated with no real hierarchy.
No thought to them.
So I think it's clear, which we'll come to, a lot of things have been done very quickly without having thought. But, the good thing is with software, you can always fix it on the move. So other than really this kind of very counterintuitive or non-intuitive experience of both the UI and UX, especially in the 6E, the way everything is. I think otherwise, this car has got phenomenal potential. And the sense I'm getting again from the dealers that people have absolutely freaked out on it. I mean, this is, again, I would say, to be honest, Rajesh, Jejurika's Midas touch. I may be too presumptuous to say it right now, but it looks that this is another winner which they've kind of knocked out of the park, despite having these few flaws. But, that's really the beauty of it. The way they've kind of spec'd the vehicle, as I've said, the way they've designed it, the kind of features they've packed into it, it's kind of is so overwhelmingly appealing, you tend to be blind to
forgive it.
A lot of the flaws that there are. So I think this is going to be one of the big players in 2025.
True. But Hormazd, having said that, and we discussed this, the hardware bits can't be changed. A certain, the entry exit into the 6E, at least it's a bit of a challenge. A software can be updated, but the amount of software that they've put in, my fear is that, it may be too much, because software is as it is, and we should discuss this, as it is a problem with EVs, especially so with EVs. Right.
So, and software is fundamentally the biggest issue with EVs. And, we all thought that EVs were more reliable than ICE cars, but they're not. I mean, globally, 15% of cars have software issues. And out of that, about 60% have to go back to the service station to get it fixed. So really, I mean, this whole thing about EVs being absolutely reliable, fewer mechanical parts, nothing going wrong.
Right.
The software is the biggest challenge. And I think, in let's say EVs, the software, is challenges are exponentially higher than in ICE vehicles, because, you've got to have one centralized architecture, which really takes care of a lot of things. You've got the electric powertrain, you've got the battery management system, you've got the ADAS, you've got the infotainment, and everything is linked, and, kind of lack of harmonization between all this, kind of creates all the issues. Then there are other issues also that, you don't have enough testing time. Things are always rushed. So you don't have mature life cycles. That's one of the reasons. Then, OTA, over the air updates, which is great, but sometimes they kind of introduce bugs and glitches into the system. Every time we update our iPhone, also, 18.01, whatever, as it is not happy with it. Plus, also, I think you're very dependent on third-party software, let's say, third-party softwares for this. So again, that integrating that with yours, so it's very, very challenging, to kind of get the software going. And this is one of the biggest downfalls of the Tata EV, which we'll also talk about. But that's what it is. I mean, you've got very few companies have nailed it. I think Tesla, of course, really has in its whole way. There's got other issues when it's taken it to a different level of, let's say, autonomous driving. I think Hyundai with their eGMP platform, I think to me is again a phenomenal standard. Mercedes with their MBUX. And when you use these cars, I was driving the 6C and then came into, was driving the 7 Series also, which is also quite complex, but still compared to the 6C, that was a lot more logical and intuitive than that. So I think it's all a part of learning. Software is something which the entire auto industry is grappling with. They're trying to move, from being so hardware driven to software driven. And I think that really is the big challenge here. So
I mean, Hormazd, the software, and it's almost also a learning for manufacturers. I've been talking to Anand from Tata Motors. He was saying that, look, all of us, he says, we're new to this speed cameras. Some of the speed cameras apparently near Pune are interfering with certain systems on the car.
I know he was mentioning, Anand Kulkarni was saying that, I don't know whether speed cameras or just general cameras, which kind of when they pass, the screens go blank, there's some interference.
Yes.
But having said that, I think, Tata Motors is facing a serious issue, quality issue, because I think riddled with software problems. It's just all over the internet. And I think this is the one thing people talk about is
we've
how
had it
badly. Yeah, we had it too. A long-term punch. It had the high voltage alert critical errors. That seems to be a standard thing, which a lot of people are getting, the high voltage critical error, which needs to be fixed. Sadly, the Tata Curve EV, which I was so looking forward to take to Mahabaleshwar to do a good old Maha test, like I say, went to take it out. That had conked because there was a low voltage, the 12 volt battery error in that. So, I think Tata Motors is seriously suffering from these sort of quality issues. And I think what's making it worse is that the company has grown so big with such great volume, with all that success. It's in a way now coming back to bite them because the service teams can't kind of, let's say, cope and get the cars back to the customers fast enough. In fact, talking to some of the dealers, they say even Mahindra have certain issues, but they're much faster in resolving them than Tata Motors is. So really, customers with Tata cars really are having an issue right now. And again, to be honest, from Tata's point of view, I just fear that they might throw away that first mover advantage they have because all their cars right now typically have been ICE conversions. And, that's been quick to the market. But we have now finally seen the relevance or how appealing a skateboard architecture is, starting with the Windsor. The way it's packaged, the way the tech is done inside, you can see it's next generation, it's new generation. It's not a mishmash of something old and new. And it feels like, especially from the inside, like a completely different experience to a nice vehicle. The flat floor, let's say even a flattish IP panel, because everything else can be put in the front. There's no legacy stuff in there. So I think that is again part of the appeal.
So yeah, absolutely, Hormazd. Software clearly the sort of main culprit here. The motor, simple as it is still humbly, sort of ably churning away. Software is creating this thing, but what do you think and how soon do you think will the solution come?
I think everyone's moving to software-defined vehicles, or SDVs, have they call it, where the central software manages all the vehicles' functionality, and hardware are just are added modules. That's really the software which is driving it. To be honest, the new Mahindras are in a way SDVs because they are the first ones to use on a mass scale, an Ethernet-based electric and electronic architecture. So that is the backbone of any kind of SDV right now, to be able to transfer data as fast as possible so the different systems can communicate with each other. You still have the CAN and the CAN FD, let's say networks as well to support more, let's say, localized functions and safety and all. But I think that's the way it is. So, it's all about learning software. SDVs are the way to go. It's really kind of makes it much easier. It lets you integrate all the systems much more seamlessly with one centralized software. And I think that's what's going to happen. And Mahindra has done that. But, again, I think there's going to be a little bit of learning for them as well as soon as they perfect it.
Sure.
And from what we understand, they've got about 2 months before the cars get into customer hands to do that. And, on this topic, I was just talking to Velu, who says he's got a software team of 200 software engineers in Coimbatore only working on fixing all this. So, there's a lot going into that. And clearly, that's where the investment for all OEMs are going in, is to develop their software skills and capabilities. If you look at it, no one talks about engines now. Even the customers don't.
Software.
It's all software engineers. This is what, people, they're charging top dollar for also. This is where really careers are really being made. And I think there's a dearth of good people. And I think that's really what OEMs are looking on, developing those skill sets too.
So, Hormazd, clearly SDVs are the future, but our future for 2025 at least is still a mixed bag actually, because we've got, and we should discuss them, the Harrier EV, we've got the Creta EV, which are both sort of legacy products conversions, but we've got the Vitara, which is grounds up new. So, let's take them in order. Which one are you looking forward to the most of these three at least?
Well, I'm looking forward to the Vitara.
Okay.
Clearly because it's market leader Maruti. And clearly they've been very late to the party. In fact, they even delayed the launch of the Vitara by 6 months. They don't say it, but we know from suppliers. There was some software issues with the CDC or cockpit domain controller. Again, software related. They're working with Toyota on this. Again, goes to show that how difficult it is sorting out software. Even global companies have a challenge. So, but it's going to be sold with a Toyota badge as well. So I think with that, you can expect a certain amount of reliability. And I think what will happen is that for everyone frustrated with the kind of really poor reliability of the Tata EVs so far, unfortunately, this might be another option for them because, frankly, I think, unfortunately, right now, there's so little confidence in EV reliability with all this buzz and chatter and, word of mouth going on the software issues, that, this could kind of change that. So I'm looking forward to the Vitara. We saw the pictures, nothing exceptional. In fact, I think the E6 already makes it look outdated, but there will be some people who want it for that functionality.
Absolutely. And a more traditional sort of SUV, you're buying a car, EV being incidental.
And it's pretty well spec'd also. I think it'll be pretty well priced. 59 kilowatt hour battery. There's even 4-wheel drive option. And don't forget, this, out of all of them, is the only global EV.
Right.
I'll be honest, I don't think any of the Mahindras could stand a chance in this form internationally in global markets, which are much more mature. They don't like the gimmicks. They like,
fundamental.
This absolute fundamentals, everything working quite fine, everything logically laid out. Clearly, but, Mahindra's agenda right now is the Indian market. So that's what they've catered to. Whereas that's even a disadvantage for something like Maruti Suzuki because they have to balance both. And I think the two customer profiles are completely different. Someone buying an EV in Europe and someone buying it in India. So I think, in that sense, it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a very sorted, well, kind of rounded vehicle. I think that's it's market leader. So you've got a big network. So there's automatically a chance of good numbers over there. Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, network is an interesting point. And you could just dispatch a few cars to them and instantly your sales will be more than your competitors.
Exactly.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think the Creta EV also is something I'm quite.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to, Hormazd, because it's electric, but it's a Creta. Again, it's the Creta, the mid-size SUV champ.
The king,
Yeah, exactly.
Electrified.
And like you said, Hyundai, they have really sorted the EV game out. We love the Ioniq 5.
Yeah,
It was a car of the year. Yeah, exactly. We both love it. I think everyone in the office keeps running for its keys. So that in the Creta, more affordable, approachable price point, I think is really exciting me because they've got the experience with EVs. It's got the brand name. I think it could also do wonders.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely could. I think, all these vehicles are going to make people relook at them. I think the whole thing is get a product that's reliable, exciting, enticing to really overcome the kind of challenges or hurdles that there are right now, fundamentally to do with charging. You get what I'm saying? And they say, that once you drive an EV,
exactly,
it's very hard to go back to an ICE.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. No, and then there's, of course, the Harrier EV. It's got an ace up its sleeve, right?
The four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And I think this is one case where they may have one up on Mahindra, because Mahindra traditionally, all the vehicles have had some four-wheel drive option.
Right.
Tata Motors with the new Harrier, they couldn't do 4x4. Clearly, there were technical challenges to that. We knew they couldn't do it. And, the Safari, which was the old Safari, was 4x4. A body on frame 4x4. That was a legend. And, it's come as a front wheel drive one. Really got nothing in common with the old Safari. But I think now is a chance with Harrier and Safari 4x4 versions to really, bring back that appeal. And Mahindra, for example, they don't have a 4x4 option as yet.
But isn't the Inglo platform 4x4?
It is. But I think the 4x4 plan was with Volkswagen.
Okay.
And from what I understand, I don't think they're going ahead with Volkswagen Motors. They were, from what I understand, about 15,000 or 20,000 rupees more expensive than the current Valeo motor they have. So the 4x4 was with the VW Motors would have been a great thing. And I think, again, costs to keep that down. So I don't think we'll be seeing a 4x4 from them in a hurry.
Too soon.
Anytime too soon. But, I could be wrong. Mahindra are just incredibly fast when it comes to developing, variants and things like that. And that's where I think the Harrier and the Safari are going to be fantastic, because I think the spec is superb. What I hear is in 4x4, 560 to 600 Newton meters of torque. That's roughly where it is. So they're going to go all out with their flagship SUV. I think it'll be expensive. Clearly, it'll be at the top end because it's going to cost. Going to have a big battery to kind of deliver that kind of power and range as well. And I think they should have it should have a good range. But again, coming to range, quickly, I want to touch upon these big SUVs, which is the XEV9e and even the Safari. People take them long distance. Yeah. They're not just city cars. And that's really where there is a bit of a challenge, because long distance, you're depending on charging infrastructure, which isn't always fun and easy to manage. But I think charging infrastructure will come, and government is also really pushing, the new PME, which really gives a lot of impetus to charging infrastructure by way of subsidies, by way of PLI, all that sort of thing. So I think that will really help, but it will take some time. But I think I'm excited about the Harrier and the Safari as a 4x4. Should be quite exciting. Yeah.
True. Yeah, and actually, interestingly though, Hormazd, the Harrier EV is what we know is coming next year. The Safari may be delayed, but there could be the Sierra EV before that, and I'm interested in that one.
I think Sierra EV actually is a big model for Tata Motors. It's completely new, and I think it'll be their first really all new model in that sense, because even the Curve EV was, to be honest, Nexon Plus.
Yeah.
But the Sierra, completely new body style, going to have larger wheels, will be that upright SUV, will be in ICE and EV. So I think a lot is riding on that for Tata Motors. It'll come out later. And, I think the EV version will really be fantastic on that. So I think, Tata Motors has stuff up its sleeve as well. But, I think the kind of momentum products like the Windsor and I think even the e-Vitara can build up, and Mahindra, it's going to be very hard for them to hang on to their market share. And I think eventually it's going to drop dramatically.
It will drop.
And of course, there's BYD, which is a recent phenomenon, well, say last couple of years, phenomenal products, shaken Tesla, really kind of taken the fight right to Tesla's doorstep, beaten them in certain months. Really the ones to watch for, globally doing fantastically well. But of course, in India also too, their seal has been superb. The car's really well sorted, but little limited because challenges in investment into India operations. So I think they're still relying on a CBU strategy where they're capped at about 2,500 units. But I think, once they localize more and they do a little bit of CKD, numbers could go up. But, I think out of all the, let's say, imports or mass market imports, that's really been a car that's impressed us a lot.
Yeah, and BYD almost holds these kind of ace in the EV world, which is the batteries, the blade cells, right? I mean, everyone's now lining up to use or wants to use, a BYD blade cell.
Yeah, well, I think, you've got others also who have now kind of got getting into
Yeah.
blade technology. But yeah, you've got some of the big players, the two of them, or three of them, you've got Maruti Suzuki, Toyota, and Mahindra using the BYD blade cell, which really we can see the advantage of that. We've seen it in the BYD cars, fantastic range, very stable LFP technology. And I think that's really, it's, as they say, the battery is the secret sauce.
True, absolutely, Hormazd. And, Hormazd, we've I think discovered, I think we've sort of discussed all of the mass segment players. Before we round up, why don't we touch on some of the luxury brands? Because I'm really looking forward to the Q6, the Audi Q6, because it's actually their new generation. We've criticized their older or the current, products of being a little too old and long.
Yeah, I mean, the infotainment systems are totally outdated,
Right.
2 generations behind. But the new one, I think,
exactly. Q6 brings in all of the new gen, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think in the luxury segment?
Shares a platform with the Macan, the PP architecture.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Rear wheel drive. I drove the Q6.
Right.
Hugely impressed with it.
Again,
It's a fantastic car to drive. Lovely handling. Even the whole, the new infotainment system, very packed but works quite seamlessly. So obviously a lot has gone into it. So I think that's going to be there. But again, could be quite expensive.
Exactly.
It'll again be a very small, let's say very small sales over there. But I think, luxury guys are chipping away constantly, bringing in newer and newer EVs. But I think they'll just remain a very niche segment on the sale.
Yeah, it'll be a niche segment, and I think it'll probably just sort of convert or eat into their own share. As I think it was Santosh from Mercedes who was saying this to me. He said that at the luxury end, the chances of a customer switching to EV is higher than at the lower end.
Actually, you just assume me as home charging because they all have access to that too.
Plus, it's the second or third car.
It's very smooth, it's very quiet, it's very luxurious. It just serves their purpose. And you're absolutely right. I think in that segment, that's where really adoption is the fastest. And if you look at the percentage, it will be quite, it is much more than the overall, let's say, the percentage of the entire market, which is about just over 2%. Yeah.
Correct, exactly. Yeah. And then, Hormazd, there's another car that probably you and I are not as excited about as Nikhil is, right? Which is the electric version of the G.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to be quite mad. I mean, I can imagine how it is. In fact, I was there for the Mille Miglia and near this whole kind of, let's say, line of all the generations of the G class with the EQG right at the top over there. And, clearly just showing how it's evolved originally from what was to be a military vehicle right up to an electric SUV. So clearly, I think that's exciting. Obviously, it's got a lot of pedigree. But again, these cars people should be taking long distances. And, let's say in a city like Mumbai, it'll take you a good 200 kilometers to get to a place where you can actually enjoy this.
Right.
So charging again could be an issue. But, I think these cars are so iconic. They have their own kind of appeal. And I think that could be, let's say one of the
wilder ones.
Yeah, wilder ones, which people are just going to lap up. Look at the way they're lapping up the current G class.
Exactly. And, Hormazd, you said charging. And I think we should also discuss that because while manufacturers are doing their all, getting in products, trying to sort out the problems, we've got to also address, obviously, the government support in terms of not just charging, because it goes beyond that, right? In terms of taxation too. I mean, if you look at the taxation currently, we've got some states that have road tax, some states that don't have road tax, some states that offered it, took it back, offered it again. So this is sort of creating a a very hard market to even predict for planners, right?
No, that's right. I think at the state level, that's a little bit of confusion because it kind of really impacts a lot of things. The resale value, which is again one of the reasons why people are hesitant to buy EVs. But it could be a point where the vehicle is so exciting you even forget about that. I think that's really been the Mahindra approach. What they say, make it like a lifestyle vehicle, something you're just dying to own to hell with everything else. But I think again coming back to the
States.
states, yeah, I think it's very confusing. I mean, Delhi had waived off registration road tax. Then they brought it back. Then recently, again, given how the AQI is going, that again has been waived off. Maharashtra, it's waived off, been quite consistent. So some states get it, they don't get it. Andhra being one example again. It's now again been waived off. So there has to be consistency in let's say taxation, incentives, subsidies at the state level,
Right.
to kind of just not create these kind of turbulence in the EV market. But having said that, I think one thing we have to do is we have to compliment the government for this 5% GST. I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal because clearly, I think it's better than what a lot of the big car markets offer. And you have to see it in context and perspective why products like Mahindra's EVs are looking so enticing and appealing is the delta between the highest rate of GST with all the tax.
Because we do have a very high rate as well.
Yeah, it goes, you add the cess and everything, it goes to about 48%. Technically, if their cars were, at a ground clearance of more than 170 mm, it would go to 50%. But anyway, you take it at 48 and then down to 5%. And that's massive. That is a massive difference. And I think what's great is that the manufacturers are giving it on to the customers, not necessarily keeping that. So it's really been a win-win. The government has really given the incentive to do it. The OEMs, manufacturers have really passed on that incentive to the customers, and you're getting a vehicle at parity with the ICE products. And then and with states with no road tax, it can even be cheaper. And, looking at our penetration, I think they are saying Europe will be about 23%, China's over 50% with, all electrified vehicles. The US is going to be around 13%. We are just about 2%. But I think, next year, I think that could increase to maybe, even 4 to 5%.
So
I think it could double, with the rate of, with the models that are coming on. But again, with this level of taxation remaining. So I just hope that, they stick to 5% for a while until the EV market grows to about 10 to 15% penetration, because withdrawing subsidies too early like they've done in Europe again has a negative impact. And we've seen that, Europe has been a mess in terms of what they've been doing with their EV story, and they put in billions of dollars. Companies are going belly up, Volkswagen and all this investment into EV where customers are just not taking them. So it becomes a big problem over there. But I think, we are better placed. We've got a low base. And I think, clearly, I think with the new models coming out, I think, 2025 could be the rebirth of the EV story, a resurgence of EVs again. And I think it's going to be quite an interesting year.
Great. So, Hormazd, on that note, your prediction, let's just end with your prediction for next year. Like you said, okay, you're expecting it to double or more than double. Who do you think would be the leader in this space? Would you like to go out on a limb and pick a winner?
I think hard to say, but I think the way, looking at the numbers, looking at what capacities are, I would say that I still think maybe Tata Motors will hold its lead because they've got some new products coming out.
Right.
They've got a range of products as well. They've got the punch and all, but that's just assuming they solve their problems. If they don't solve their problems, they won't do it. I think Maruti will definitely do some good numbers, though a lot of them are going for exports. Mahindra's could be the surprise. They've really surprised us in the past, so I would bet on Mahindra as well. So really hard to say. I'm not just giving you one number. But I think
3-horse race.
Yeah, that's right. And and I think MG has got they've not got any mass market models coming out, and they've got, I think, the MIFA 9, and they've got the Tybit will be niche. So I don't know how much they can ramp up their capacity. Also, a lot of it is capacity dependent. But I think for Mahindra, it's a kind of a point to prove. They bombed quite badly with the XUV 400. Before that, they had the absolute first mover advantage with the Riva, which they squandered. So I think this sort of third time they want to prove a point. So I think Mahindra could be the ones that could really kind of get those numbers. But they've just got two models. They've got the XUV 700, the non-coupe one, the regular one, also as a model in the offing. They've got the Rally and all. Depends on how the market evolves. So they have got a lot of firepower as well. But Tata Motors have a broader spread at the lower end. But, people aren't really picking it up over there. So I think it's really, to me, looking like it's not necessarily the cheapest EV that is going to be the most popular or the best selling. It's going to be the ones that really excite, really, entice to make that switch from ICE to EVs. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this session of Deep Drive. See you again same time next week, Saturday at 11 o'clock. And you can also catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to all these platforms.